you guys. Hello, good evening, everybody. Thank you for being with us. Can we get things started, if that's okay with everyone? Can I have the guests of honor to step up on the dais, please? Mr. Adur Gopalakrishnan, Dr. M.V. Pillai, Professor Geeta, Ms. Nirda, and of course Tamara. Great, thank you so much. We will get started with prayer by Sagara, Tamara's good friend. Oh, I'm so sorry. We'll kickstart the evening with lighting of the lamp. Lakshmi, if you can help us. Mr. Adur Gopalakrishnan, please. Can we have all of you come up? Thank you.
Just a second.
Tamara, come. Well, I think you should get in the back.
Come. Sir, sir, here, sir. Please, sir. There's one more.
Yeah, there's one more.
She'll do. So after you.
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead. You want to do?
Test of perseverance. Please. Thank you. Thank you very much. That was a test of perseverance in addition to a start of an auspicious evening. To kick things off, can I have Ms. Sagara, a good friend of Tamara's, to have a convocation prayer? This is the prayer, Ya Kundindu Tusharahara. And can I request folks to please stand up for the prayer? Thank you.
या कुन्देन्दु तुषारहार धवला या शुभ्रवस्त्रावृता या वीणावरदण्डमण्डितकरा या श्वेतपद्मासना या ब्रह्माच्युतशङ्कर प्रभृतिभिः देवैः सता वन्दिता सा मां पातु सरस्वती भगवती निःशेषजाड्यापहा.
Thank you. If you allow me to indulge you for a couple of seconds, I'll explain the beauty of that poem. The poem starts off with the description of superfluous adjectives about the goddess Saraswati. But it ends on the last two lines, it ends with the explanation of the removal of dullness of the mind and therefore clarity into consciousness that leads to ultimate knowledge. So there's some essential beauty in not only in the poetry, but also very relevant to why we are here today. Great, so welcome to the launch of Undiscovered. This is a book of poetry, 38 poems that Tamara has put together. Good evening, my name is Jay Krishnan. I'm the father of the poet. Thank you. On that note, the only responsibility I bear is to carry on the genetic material that my father K. Kunjakrishnan had in terms of literary endowment to the daughter, Tamara. I have no other claims to fame in between. Happy New Year to everybody. The year 2023 gives us another opportunity to get things right. In Tamara's case, it gives her and the lucky father an opportunity to potentially get one more book. My resolution was to not drag on and have long speeches. 4 days in, 30 seconds in, I have already failed on my resolution, so I'll keep it very short. First of all, I do want to thank Authors Press New Delhi and Mr. Sudarshan Kacheri for having taken the risk, if you will, of publishing Tamara's poems. So while he's not here, a round of acknowledgement and thank you, Authors Press. Mr. T.P. Srinivasan, who is the host of today's event, is also not here, unfortunately, because of a personal exigency, but thank you to him as well for hosting this. And thank you all for being here on a Wednesday evening. I'm sure a lot of you had wonderful things to do on a Wednesday, but as a famous personality once said, it's only when you get older do you realize the beauty of what a Wednesday stands for. And in case you're interested, that's Albert Brooks, comedian slash playwright slash actor. Let me take the pleasure of introducing the author and the book. In your one-pager that's potentially on the chairs that you're sitting on, there is a poem by Tamara when she was 5 years old. When my mother, who's seated in the front row, used to berate my brother and I, being the generation that I was, we took it with a fair amount of comfort and coy. But in this case, Tamara decided to express that in the form of poetry. So thankful to Amma for continuing the consistency of berating children. And thank you to my daughter for having expressed it a little different than the way I did. In the following years since then, she's written a series of poems which you'll find in the book today. 38 of them classified in 6 different categories. I must admit, the first time Lakshmi and I, my wife and I, read the first poem, the initial instinct was to go up on Google and see where she plagiarized it from. Turned out it was original, and some of the sections are reasonably existential. It deals with things like colors and hues of life. It also deals with various things that are reasonably imaginative for a 7, 8, 9-year-old, like the universe. We'll get a chance to see and hear the poet Tamara read the poetry in a bit. But to commence things off, I would invite Mr. Aduru Gopalakrishnan to address the audience. Before that, I've been endowed with the task of introducing him, and I figured someone like him does not need an introduction at this audience. But I shall take the opportunity to put out 2 lines that I found online. Mr. Gopalakrishnan's debut film, Swayamvaram, recently celebrated its Golden Jubilee, and it was arguably the film that propelled Malayalam film into the international arena. Over and top of that, I do want to share a personal story that introduces Aduru Gopalakrishnan. Aduru uncle, as I've known him, the last many years ago, the first time that I probably met him, and the impression that I have of him is when I was exactly as old as Tamara is today, and I had gone to his house, and his daughter Ashwati and I spent the entire weekend playing with a tiny kitten that had walked into that house, and it was so much fun. Years later, when I met him again, he did tell me about the kitten, so it talks about the personality that he is. I would take the opportunity to invite Mr. Aduru Gopalakrishnan to release the book, and to receive the book. Can I invite Dr. M.B. Pillai to receive the book, please?
ഇവിടെ കൂടിയിരിക്കുന്നവർ ക്ഷമിക്കണം, ഞാൻ മലയാളത്തിലാണ് സംസാരിക്കാൻ പോകുന്നത്. പുസ്തകം ഇംഗ്ലീഷിലാണ്, ഇംഗ്ലീഷിൽ പഠിച്ച കുട്ടിയാണ്. എങ്കിൽ പോലും മലയാളം അറിയാവുന്ന ഒരു ഓഡിയൻസിന് മുമ്പിൽ ഇംഗ്ലീഷ് പ്രസംഗിക്കാൻ ഞാൻ ശ്രമിക്കുന്നില്ല. ഇതൊരു വളരെ അപൂർവമായ ഒരു പുസ്തക റിലീസാണ്. ഞാൻ ഒരു തൊഴിലാളി എന്നുള്ള നിലയിൽ ഒരുപാട് പുസ്തകങ്ങൾ റിലീസ് ചെയ്യാറുണ്ട്. എന്നോട് ചിലരൊക്കെ ചോദിക്കാറുണ്ട് ഇവിടുത്തെ കേരളത്തിലുള്ളവരല്ല, കേരളത്തിൽ പുറത്തുള്ളവർ ചോദിക്കാറുണ്ട്, സാറിന് എപ്പോഴാണ് ഇനി സമയം കിട്ടുന്നത്, ഈ പുസ്തക റിലീസ് എല്ലാം കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ട് എപ്പോഴാണ് സമയമുള്ളത് എന്ന് ചോദിക്കാറുണ്ട്. അപ്പോൾ സത്യമാണ്, വളരെ രഹസ്യമായിട്ട് ചിലർക്കറിയാം ഞാൻ പുസ്തകം വായിക്കുന്ന കൂട്ടത്തിലാണ് എന്ന്. അതുകൊണ്ടാണ് എന്നെ പുസ്തക റിലീസിന് വിളിക്കുന്നത്. പുസ്തക റിലീസിന് വിളിച്ചാലുള്ള ഒരു പ്രോബ്ലം, പുസ്തകം വായിച്ചിട്ട് വേണം പോകാൻ. ആദ്യമേ പുസ്തകം വായിക്കണം. വായിച്ചാൽ അത്ര നല്ലതല്ലെങ്കിൽ പിന്നെ ഒരു ചമ്മലാണ് അവിടെ പോയത് എന്ത് പറയും എന്നുള്ളതിനെ പറ്റി. നല്ലതാണെങ്കിൽ എത്രയും പറയാം. എനിക്ക് ഭാഗ്യവശാൽ വളരെ 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 മനസ്സിന് ആനന്ദം തന്ന ഒരു പുസ്തകമാണ് തമാര എഴുതിയിരിക്കുന്നത്, അൺഡിസ്കവേർഡ്. ഇന്നിപ്പോൾ പറ്റിയ ഒരബദ്ധം, ഷീ ഈസ് ഡിസ്കവേർഡ് നൗ. അതൊരു വലിയ പ്രോബ്ലമാണ്. വളരെ രഹസ്യമായിട്ട് സ്വന്തമായിട്ടിരുന്ന് എഴുതിക്കൊണ്ടിരുന്ന ഒരു കുട്ടിയെ പെട്ടെന്ന് ഡിസ്കവർ ചെയ്ത് അത്ര ശരിയായില്ല എന്ന് ഞാൻ പറയും. കാരണം കവിതയെന്ന് പറയുന്നത് ആത്മാവിൽ നിന്ന്, നമ്മുടെ ആത്മാവിൽ നിന്ന് വരുന്നതാണ്. ഒരു ലേഖനം എഴുതുന്നത് പോലെയോ ഒരു കഥ എഴുതുന്നത് പോലെയോ ഒന്നുമല്ല. അത് ശരിക്കും ആത്മാവിൽ നിന്ന് നേരിട്ട് നിർഗളിക്കുന്നതാണ് കവിത. അതിനെ എനിക്ക് തമാരയ്ക്കോട് എനിക്ക് കുറച്ച് പ്രായമായതുകൊണ്ട് അഡ്വൈസ് ചെയ്യുന്ന ഒരു സൂക്കേടുണ്ട്. ഈ പ്രായവർക്കെല്ലാം ഉള്ളതാണ്. അവരുമായിരിക്കും ലോകമൊക്കെ കണ്ടു കഴിഞ്ഞു എന്ന് വിചാരിക്കും. അതുപോലെ ആ കൂട്ടത്തിൽ ഒരാളാണ് ഞാനും. അപ്പോൾ തമാരയോട് ഞാൻ പറയുന്നത്, തമാരയോട് പല ഉപദേശങ്ങളും പലരും തരും. ഒരു കാരണവശാലും ശ്രദ്ധിക്കരുത്, ഇവരെല്ലാം ചേർന്ന് നിങ്ങളുടെ കവിത നശിപ്പിച്ച് കളയും. കവിത സ്വന്തമാണ്, നമ്മുടെ ആത്മാവിനോട് ചേർത്ത് നിർത്തേണ്ട ഒരു കാര്യമാണ് കവിത. അത് എല്ലാവർക്കും അതിൻ്റെ സിദ്ധിയില്ല. ഞാൻ മനസ്സിലാക്കുന്നത് തമാരയ്ക്ക് കവിത എഴുത്ത് മാത്രമല്ല, ചിത്രമെഴുത്തിലും അങ്ങനെ ഒരുപാട് കാര്യങ്ങളിൽ താല്പര്യമുണ്ട്. അങ്ങനെ വളരെ സിദ്ധികളുള്ള ഒരു കുട്ടിയാണ്. അപ്പോൾ നിങ്ങൾ അവരെ അനാവശ്യമായിട്ടുള്ള സ്തുതി കൊണ്ടോ അനാവശ്യമായിട്ടുള്ള പ്രോത്സാഹിപ്പിക്കരുത്. മാതാപിതാക്കളോട് എനിക്ക് പറയാവുന്നത്, അവരെ അത്യാവശ്യമായിട്ട് പ്രോത്സാഹിക്കാൻ പോകരുത്. അവർ സ്വയം അവരുടേതായ സ്ട്രഗിളിൽ കൂടി വേണം അവർ ഉയർന്നു വരാനായിട്ട്. ഒരു കാരണവശാലും നമുക്ക് ഒരു കവിക്കോ ഒരു കലാകാരനോ അങ്ങനെ പറഞ്ഞു നടക്കുന്നവരുണ്ട്, എനിക്ക് ആരുടെയും സഹായം കിട്ടുന്നില്ല, ആരും എന്നെ പിന്താങ്ങുന്നില്ല, എനിക്ക് സപ്പോർട്ടില്ല എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞു നടക്കും. അവൻ വഷളനാണ് പറയുന്നവൻ. കാരണം ഇത് ആരും താങ്ങിയിട്ടുണ്ടാക്കേണ്ട സംഗതിയല്ല കലാകാരൻ്റെ ജീവിതം എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. അയാൾ സ്വയം സ്ട്രഗിൾ ചെയ്ത് കഷ്ടപ്പെട്ട് ഉണ്ടാക്കിയെടുക്കുന്ന ജീവിതമാണ്. അപ്പോൾ ഇത്ര നല്ല ഉന്നതമായ ജീവിത ശൈലിയിലൊക്കെ ജീവിക്കുകയാണെങ്കിൽ പോലും ഒരു കവിയുടെ ഹൃദയം എപ്പോഴും ഉഴറിക്കൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്ന ഒരു ഹൃദയമാണ്, അതൃപ്തിയുടെയാണ്. ഞാൻ ഉള്ള സത്യം പറയട്ടെ, കുട്ടിയുടെ ആദ്യത്തെ ഈ പുസ്തകത്തിലെ ആദ്യത്തെ കവിത വായിച്ച് ഞാൻ അന്തം വിട്ടുപോയി. ഒരു കുഞ്ഞ് ഗർഭപാത്രത്തിൽ നിന്ന് പുറത്ത് വരുന്നതിനെ പറ്റിയാണ്. പുറത്ത് വരുമ്പോൾ കാണുന്ന വെളിച്ചത്തിലേക്ക് വന്നു പറയും. നമ്മൾ പറഞ്ഞ ജീവിതത്തിലേക്ക് വന്നു എന്നൊക്കെ പറയുന്നില്ലേ, ഈ വെളിച്ചം സഹിക്കാൻ വയ്യ കുഞ്ഞിന്. കാരണം ആ സമയത്ത് ഒന്നിനും കാണാനും വയ്യല്ലോ കുഞ്ഞിന്. ഇതെല്ലാം കൃത്യമായിട്ട് എന്തൊരു മനോഹരമായിട്ട് എന്തൊരു ഉൾക്കാഴ്ചയോടുകൂടി എഴുതിയിരിക്കുന്നു. അത് വായിച്ചപ്പോൾ ഞാൻ വരച്ചു, ഇനി ബാക്കി കവിത ഒന്നും വായിച്ചില്ലെങ്കിലും കുഴപ്പമില്ല, ഇത് മതി എന്ന് എനിക്ക് തോന്നി. അത്ര ഞാൻ വായിച്ചു, എല്ലാ കവിതയും വായിച്ചു. പക്ഷെ അത്രമാത്രം കുട്ടിയുടെ ഈ പ്രായത്തിൽ ഒരുപാട് അനുഭവങ്ങളൊക്കെ വന്ന ഒരാൾ എഴുതുന്നത് പോലെയാണ് ഇയാൾ എഴുതുന്നത്. ഈ പ്രോമിസാണ് ഇതിനെപ്പറ്റി കൂടുതൽ ശരിക്കും പറഞ്ഞുകൂടാ. കാരണം അത് കുട്ടിക്ക് ദോഷം ചെയ്യും. എനിക്കതിന് തീരെ താല്പര്യമില്ല. എനിക്ക് ഈ കുട്ടിയെ വലിയൊരു കവിയായിട്ട് വരുന്നത് കാണാനാണ് ഇഷ്ടം. മലയാളത്തിനും ഇന്ത്യക്ക് തന്നെയും ഒരു അഭിമാനിക്കാവുന്ന ഒരു കവിയായിട്ട് വരണം. അതാണ് ഈ അവസരത്തിൽ എനിക്ക് ആഗ്രഹിക്കാനുള്ളത്. അപൂർവമാണ് കുട്ടികൾക്ക് ഈ പ്രായത്തിൽ കവിത ഉണ്ടാകുന്നത്. കവിത തന്നെ അത് വല്ലതിൻ്റെയും അനുകരണമല്ലാതെ വരുന്നത് വളരെ ഒറിജിനലാണ്. തിങ്കിങ്ങൊക്കെ നോക്കിയാൽ അറിയാം, വളരെ ഒറിജിനലാണ്. അത് കളയാൻ സാധിക്കരുത്. അതിലൊരിക്കലും പുരളരുത്. അതിന് ഒരിക്കലും അലങ്കാരമൊന്നും ആരും ചെയ്തു കൊടുക്കരുത്. ഞാൻ പറഞ്ഞത്, ഈ അധ്യാപകരോ രക്ഷിതാക്കളോ അപ്പൂപ്പന്മാരോ ഒന്നും തന്നെ അവരെ ദയവായിട്ട് ഉപദേശിക്കരുത്, മാർഗദർശനം നൽകാൻ ശ്രമിക്കരുത്. അവരെ വിട്ട് അവരുടെ പാടിന് വിടുക. അവർ സ്വന്തം നിലയിൽ അയാളെ കവിയായി ഉയരാൻ പോകുന്ന ആളാണ്. കവിയായി മാത്രമല്ല, അവർ പ്രവർത്തിക്കുന്ന എല്ലാ രംഗത്തും അതിൻ്റെ മുഖത്ത് എഴുതി വച്ചിട്ടുണ്ട്. എല്ലാ രംഗങ്ങളിലും നല്ല ഭാവിയിൽ വരാൻ പോകുന്ന ഒരു കുട്ടിയാണ്. അപ്പോൾ എനിക്ക് ഇതോടുകൂടി ഞാൻ എൻ്റെ വാക്കുകൾ ചുരുക്കുകയാണ്. ദയവായി ആ കുഞ്ഞിനോട് ദയവ് കാണിക്കുക, യാതൊരു ഉപദേശവും കൊടുക്കാതിരിക്കുക, നിങ്ങൾ അത്യാവശ്യമായിട്ടുള്ള പ്രോത്സാഹനം ചെയ്യാതിരിക്കുക. അതൊക്കെ സ്വയം ചെയ്തുകൊള്ളും. താങ്ക് യു വെരി മച്ച്.
Thank you. One piece of advice, Tamara: stay the hungry poet. Thank you, Uncle. Next, can I invite Dr. M.B. Pillai, Uncle, to come up and have a couple of words. As a brief background, he's a super specialist in oncology and was the president of the International Cancer Society. He's much sought after as a physician in multiple areas that include internal medicine, hematology, and medical oncology. He's a senior advisor to the Global Virus Network and was instrumental in setting up the Virology Institute in Thonnikal. Dr. Pillai is also associated with several institutions, initiating several programs and awards for the promotion of Malayalam language in the US. His erudition in literature, especially Malayalam literature, is commendable, and his elocutionary skills interspersed with poetry and humor makes him a favorite speaker at various international forums. I happen to have had the opportunity of listening to him twice in multiple continents, the last one being Toronto a few months ago. Really warm welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Can we have you up here and give us a few words, please?
Sri Adur Gopalakrishnan and Kichu, poet Tamara, Mr. Nair, Geetha Nair, and distinguished members on the dais and in the audience. If you have heard about Doctor's Dilemma, that's where I am right now. Sri Adur Gopalakrishnan initiated his brilliant speech in Malayalam, and I am wondering if anybody in the audience does not understand Malayalam. In that case, I have to revert to English. Anybody who doesn't understand Malayalam? Maybe I'll make a mixture of that, so-called Manipravalam of modern elocution. To be honest, when Mr. Kunyikrishnan and Ragini invited me to this august audience, I had some doubts about my suitability to be a speaker on such an occasion. I read that T.P. Srinivasan is there, Mr. Jayakumar is here, and they are all well-known people in art and literature. Who am I, a doctor from USA, coming in for a short vacation and addressing an audience who are here to listen to the poet par excellence at the age of 11? Then it gave me a lot of reassurance, because the American jury system is designed in such a way that they select the jury as someone who has absolutely no knowledge about criminology, absolutely no knowledge about law, but just common sense. If you use that token, that yardstick, yes, I am here, I have no idea about poetry, I have no idea about literature, and I have no idea about the modern aesthetics of literature. But there is something I would like to address. Times have changed. In a field like medicine, where you find that empathy, humanism, and understanding of the patient is fast on the decline, all the leading international medical journals have a page allotted for poetry. You may wonder why. Why New England Journal of Medicine? Journal of American Medical Association has a page on poetry. And the doctors, nurses, or any healthcare professional can send in their contribution. Highly appreciated. It has become a big ticket item in international medical journals. So poetry is coming back, maybe with a vengeance, or with pride, and with a lot of elegance. This is important because I would like to drive home a point that what is exotic is highly admired and being praised in many parts of the world. Take, for example, the work Booker Prize winning prize of Arundhati Ray. The god of small things just portrays the banks of Meenachilar. When the book was out, we had a rush of tourists from Europe and USA just to see the banks of Meenachilar. A small work which I don't think carries much literary finesse could attract a lot of tourists to the land where it was centered on. You might have heard about Manoj Knight Shyamalan. This guy is the son of a friend of mine, a cardiologist, Dr. Shyamalan, and a pediatrician, Dr. Jaya. He got admission into America's prestigious medical schools, but his mind was not in medicine. He insisted he wanted to pursue a career in movies. Jaya was upset. Shyamalan was disappointed. He made it. He made it to the Hollywood, and with The Sixth Sense, he became one of the highest paid script writer and director in Hollywood, $50 million per piece. He still reigned the world. Take, for example, African Lion, the Lion King. The theme is actually created in Africa. The movie and their Broadway show is running for the last 20 years. You can't get a ticket for Lion King in New York or Chicago or London now. Everything is booked ahead of time. It's actually a very, very short story, but how they imagined to make it an international attraction is what made the show click. Another exotic. Look, for example, what happened to the latest Booker Prize winner, Srihan Karuna Tilak, and his celebrated work, Seven Moons of Mali Almeida, the Sri Lankan writer. The theme revolves around the riots in Sri Lanka, and it could attract a Booker Prize because it is exotic. So what is exotic is being incorporated into American taste. You can see that in the so-called fusion cuisines. Our samosas are sold in Waldorf Astoria, in Marriott, in Hyatt Regency, very much in demand. Many of the South Indian dishes are now incorporated into the menu of US restaurants. So exotic is gaining ground everywhere. The reason why Manoj Night Shyamalan became such a big hit has a message inherent for Tamara. Every summer, his parents used to send him to Mahi, where the grandmother and the grandfather were living. He spent about 6 to 8 weeks listening to the grandmother, who inspired him by reading out Kottarathil Shangunni's Aidihyamala, Mahabharatam, Kunjan Nambiyarada Krithikal. And this boy who comes from USA grabs this idea, he synthesizes, presents it to the world in sixth sense. Big hit. So Tamara has a great opportunity before her. And that's why I presented her with a book from Jhumpa Lahiri. I'm sure you have heard about Jhumpa Lahiri. She is a Pulitzer Prize winning author from USA, but she grew up mostly in Italy. Jhumpa Lahiri portrays her life as a Bengali-born writer who grew up in Italy and then came to prominence in USA, 3 languages. She says there is something called How to Translate Myself and Others. That is the name of the book. I gifted it to Tamara. In that book, she makes a very important statement. Translating somebody need not be a written format. Translating ideas, folklore, mythology, passed down from grandmother and grandfather, she can modulate in such a way and make a classic out of it. And remember that she is one of the best sold author in USA now after the Pulitzer Prize. Same thing with Siddharth Mukherjee, the second person who won the Pulitzer Prize for his book on the Emperor of All Maladies. So the ideas, folklore, mythology, stories, poems from Eastern Hemisphere are gladly welcomed by the West. And the old saying of East is West and West is West and never the twain can meet may not be true. They are going to meet in the field of art, literature, and theater. So there is a symbolic gesture in accepting this from Sri Adur Gopalakrishnan, because he took the Malayalam movies internationally. So what he has done is handing over Tamara's book to somebody who is little abroad, comes here on and off. So I think what we have done in an auditorium like Harmony is to transfer the harmony of modern literature written by a young upcoming poet to an invitee from abroad. And thank you for that. I will give it wide publicity. I do not want to take too much of your time, but I want to highlight 2 things. Interpretation of poetry is not that simple. The 2 great poems often quoted as examples of the tough challenges of interpreting poetry. One is the famous poem, 2 roads crossed in a wood, and I chose the one less traveled. That has made all the difference. Robert Frost, whose poetry was admired and documented in Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru's diary, has his most favorite poem, wrote this poem too. This poem is quoted as the most misinterpreted poem written in US. And because if you read that again and again, you get a different appreciation, a different dimension of the poet's words. Tamara will face the same thing. Although her grandmother berated her at the age of 5, and literary giants say there are 2 ways to react to a stressful event. Either you can talk back and shout with an emotional outbreak, or you can contain that within and put it into words. She chose the second route, and that has made all the difference. Now at the age of 11, she has entered into the realm of poetry. And I don't want to read all of them, but I was so impressed by the poem on page, let's see, 26, which reads, "Who knows what's out there?" What a beautiful theme. And this summarizes the title of her book in my assumption. In the universe, we are nothing but a small speck of life. Who knows what's out there? Holding many secrets. Having so many unknowns, who knows what's out there? Waiting to be seen, who knows what's out there? It might even be a parallel version of me. So many secrets the universe holds, so much undiscovered, so much unexplored, so much more we are yet to know. Everyone waits in awe. Will there be breaking news about our exploration flaw? Why have we not found out half the things we want to know? Year after year, these cosmic mysteries grow. I chose this poem for two reasons. The basic qualities of a nice poem are supposed to be the rhythm, and you probably sense the rhythm in these lines. The rhyme, the repetition, the imagery. All these are shining through the lines of this 11-year-old girl. Tamara, I'm so impressed, and on behalf of everyone present here, and on behalf of your proud father, mother, grandfather, and grandmother, I salute you, and in future, poetry lovers will create a parody for this famous song in Sound of Music. I'm concluding my words by quoting a movie because we have a movie director on the stage. Julie Andrews made that song world famous. Raindrops on roses and whiskers on kittens. The rest you know. And these are a few of my favorite things. Tomorrow's youth, tomorrow's adults, tomorrow's poetry lovers are going to add another line. Raindrops on roses, whiskers on kitten, and poetry by Tamara are a few of my favorite things. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Uncle. We now also know what a doctor's dilemma is. Thank you for highlighting that. Switching gears to a slightly more academic bent, it was Professor Geeta Nair who first had a critical look. Yeah, okay, sorry. We'll have Ms. Nirda come up here and give us her perception. We had a chat yesterday about this, but I'd love to hear her perception of the book. Ms. Nirda Suresh needs actually a very special mention. Going back to the 5-year-old child who was berated, it was Nirda as the literary forum convener of the Kerala International Center who provided the first platform for Tamara to present her poems to a fairly erudite audience of writers. It was the appreciation and encouragement from that group that led to Tamara continuing to write poetry and eventually it getting published in the form of a book. Ms. Nirda herself is a famous and highly commended poet, publishing 2 volumes of poetry, and her poems have been carried in several international magazines. She's eminently suited to bless Tamara. Over to Ms. Nirda, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Jai Krishnan. I really stand here with some trepidation after Sri Adur's words that not to overpraise Tamara, but I think she deserves a due. So, without appearing to be pedantic as a teacher, because all my life I taught English to children. So, without appearing to be pedantic or with no bombast, I think I will have my say about Tamara. Distinguished dignitaries, Sri Adur Gopalakrishnan, Dr. M.V. Pillai, Professor Geeta, and our dear author Tamara Nambiar. Undiscovered, authored by Tamara Nambiar, published by Author Press, and released by Sri Adur for the Kerala International Centre, a collection of 38 poems, is a profound overflow of powerful feelings from a precocious and vibrant 11-year-old. I stand privileged to say something about her poems, though this is my first talking about an 11-year-old poet. Felicitations to this wonder girl, Tamara, standing tall with her debut collection titled Undiscovered. We have children's literature galore, both fiction and poetry. Enid Blyton, we grew up with Enid Blyton, Roald Dahl, Mark Haddon, nearer our time, J.K. Rowling, Maurice Sendak, and Judy Blume or Judith Blume. And also, we grew up with our Indian writers Anant Pai, Ruskin Bond, R.K. Narayan, Sudha Murthy. They were all literature mainly written by adults, for children, or about children. Here, Tamara is an exception. She is speaking in her own voice. As far as poetry is concerned, Edward Lear comes to mind. I think many of us have gone through the nonsense poems of Edward Lear, especially The Owl and the Pussycat. And of course, the delightful poems of Auden Nash, loved by children and adults. Shel Silverstein, with his very famous collection, Where the Sidewalk Ends, is an interesting poem where he gives due credit to all the children of the world as repository of knowledge that adults don't have. So in her writing, I find Tamara is definitely in the line of Nash and Silverstein. Now on to a voyage of discovery through Undiscovered, Tamara's world of no-nonsense poetry. The collection is grouped under several groups: undiscovered stages of life, universe, elements of earth, hues of life, dreams, ocean of emotions. The very first poem, Undiscovered, Tamara is awed by the immensity of the universe with its so far discovered aspects, prophesying that there is more to be discovered about this universe. So also, this book of poems unfold her world through her multifarious talents. I quote, she says, "I sing, draw, experiment, cook, and bake." Amazing. Stan, who is undiscovered until now. And as Sri Adu sir mentioned, we have already discovered her now. In stages of life, if Shakespeare summed up life through the 7 stages of man, starting with childhood, Tamara views life through the prism of a single day, my beautiful day. When of the sky, the sun, and the wind that fell the leaves, she declares her day is done too, as the best day of her life. Complete in itself, no overhang of the morrow or sorrow of the past. Just the day, her beautiful day. To arrive at this profundity in holding within a single day the beauty and contentment of life by a mere 5-year-old. I believe this poem was written when she was just 5. So, holding within a single day the beauty and contentment of life by a mere 5-year-old is simply mind-boggling. I am not overpraising, I am just stating facts. Into the blinding lights, which Dr. Praised, and into darkness takes you through the pangs of birth. I think Adur sir also mentioned this. into the blinding lights, a trap of existence. We glance back and take one last look at our previous life, perhaps as intimations of immortality. In Three Stops is a fascinating poem. It starts off as three distinct terrains awaiting us in life, as hell, life, and heaven. And they are soon metaphorically merged into one. Tamara says, these three stops don't really exist, it is just one. That is life on earth, and it contains all three within. Tamara's pearls of wisdom don't condemn or confound. They comfort, reassure, and urge. I quote again, remember that in life you can smile, laugh, and more, but it will end quickly. So don't waste a second. Make sure you are good to merit heaven, where you can be free, limitless, and be anything you wish to be. Tamara is a true seer in the making. In her universe poems, we have an awestruck Tamara whose concerns span the universe in its mysteries. She sounds more an adult with her characteristic childlike wonder. Who knows what is out there? It's already read out and discussed. Technology is I think it will merit looking at it once again. Conscious that space is humongous and we are so very small. She dares to dream that we may even have our own clone, a preposterous idea. And she dreams we may even have our own clone, a parallel version of me, that's herself. In true scientific spirit and futuristic, she awaits a breaking news about our exploration flaw that limits the things we want to know. Technology is no deterrent. The computer might be smarter than you, but it was made by someone just like you. So no machine can outbeat a human, according to Tamara. In the sections, elements of earth covering fire, water, air, she examines the duality of these elements as life-supporting and destructive. Starting with earth as life, nature, a warm blanket for us to survive, views fire as destructive and lovely, a symbol of anger, for hot, boiling love, potent like a magic potion. Water, she has this to say, every droplet of water is precious. Without a single drop, the ocean would be smaller than it is now. The value of a single drop there you have. Air is what we hold in our being. Air is the spirit of evil and good. I don't think I need to add anything there to this profound wisdom of Tamara. In Hues of Life, she is changing her track. There is a distinct change in course. Leaving behind the abstractions of the universe and its mysteries, Tamara focuses on the ills of society she is part of and boldly, candidly explores the politics of food and hunger. She is acutely aware of the economic inequalities in society and her duties to society. Her words, destitutes need food and water and a shelter, which we need to give them. In her poem, Inside Not Outside, a hot favorite of mine, there is a plea or a challenge for not going by just appearances, but to consider both inside of a person and the outside or the appearance of a person. She has seen it all within her 11-year span of life. Outside is being judgmental, bullying, body shaming, and the politics of color. That's the outside as far as appearances are concerned. Inside is ideas, kindness, humor. The lines speak for themselves. The reader is humbled with the lines, be you, be the best version of you, because it's the one thing that makes you special. After all, why try and fit in when you were born to stand out? The celebration of the self and the supreme assertion in the uniqueness of every individual is certainly astounding. Motivational speakers and counselors can take a page from her. In another two wonderful poems, in Something is Burning and Wanting It All, Tamara takes on climate change. On plain speak, she calls to account the adults responsible for climate change that killed nature. With unflinching poignancy laced with sarcasm, she asks, your life is nearly done, so why should you worry? You are supposed to care for living beings other than you. Thanks a lot for nothing, for all you are doing is killing. Do we have answers? We can only look away. Are you ready to answer? There is more to Tamara than wisdom, challenges, and conscience keeper. In Capture of COVID, the poem is a spirited one. It's spirited and humorous. No wallowing in self-pity. Locked up with her awesome mom, she's on a high with room service. Welcome to lovelylife.com is her in her convalescence. Yet another delightful poem is May I Have Ziz Dance is playful, teasing, and lovable, playing upon the French accent, and the reader is left intrigued, wondering if the invitation to dance was accepted. I think Tamara will answer that question at the end. Nature is all pervading in her poems, and the nature rhymes, and the poem title Nature Rhymes is a tightly knit poem and is a sheer delight in its sensory perceptions. When she says, I take a breath, I smell jasmine, it's olfactory, auditory, when she says birds sing, visual and tactile, when she says flower grows, river flows, and the grass tickle me. Her diction is simple and direct, no bombast, no bringing out aphorisms and nuggets. Her diction is simple with no ornamentation in bringing out aphorisms and nuggets of truth. The English language used with ease, mastery, and grace. I close with yet another powerful poem of Tamara that talks of tolerance and appreciation of individuality. The poem titled The Power of Love. Love begins at home. Start by loving yourself. The magic in this world does not require a wand, as it is the magic we hold within. Talks of tolerance and appreciation. She talks of tolerance and appreciation of individuality. And I'm totally in sync with Tamara when she declares, no boundaries for me. I am limitless, free. Yes, as free as Shakespeare's Ariel who sings, where the bee sucks, there suck I, in a cowslip's bell lie. With truth as her close companion, again I quote, she says, truth is absolute. It is like our conscience, your close companion, like an inseparable shadow. Have you ever seen such a passionate seeker of truth? Tamara, seeker of truth and freedom, may your life glisten as dewdrops at the tip of a leaf. Wishing you a charmed life of writing, of fiction and poetry, replete with great truths of life you have already delved into. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nirtha. Looking back 30 years, had I known that as a byproduct of Kendriya Vidyalaya system, had I known that it takes a book to impress a teacher, I would have at least tried that. But here we are today. It was Professor Geeta Nair who took an initial critical look at the manuscript of Undiscovered. And she paid encomium to the content and urged publication in the book form. Apart from being a distinguished professor of English literature, she has published 2 volumes of poetry and an anthology of short stories. Her works have appeared in several international periodicals. She's the active member of the oldest poetry chain in Trivandrum for popularizing English literature. Can I invite Professor Geeta Nair to come up and give a few words, please?
See, it's a very small piece I have. Don't worry. He's frightened you saying academic and whatnot. First of all, I should thank the hosts of this evening for the honor they have done me by inviting me to stand here and say something about Tamara's works. Of course, I refer to Sri Kunyakrishnan Kana and his wife, Mrs. Ragini Menon. Yes, I got her full name, yes. So, I'm fortunate indeed to have shared the days with a living legend. I have never come this close to a living legend, and when Nirada told me sit near him, I didn't want to, because that is how I feel about this adored person, living legend. No other word describes him. I'm sorry that Sri TPS Srinivasan is not here. I would have loved to say something about him because he's somebody to whom I look up literally and figuratively. And he has been very kind to me as he has been to so many others. And it was a pleasure to listen to Dr. M.V. Pillai, who was in no dilemma at all. That was just talk. He was very much in his element, and I enjoyed that. And as always, Nirada was full of valuable information about the poems in the book. So I enjoyed all that. Now to come to my task, not task, but my happy task. The first time I read the poetry of this young lady was about 3 or 4 years ago. And I was struck by its freshness, its charm, and also by an awareness very rare in children of that age. I'm referring to the early poems, some of which were shown to me, especially the one that is on our seats today, that little gem. Yes, I noticed her interesting thought processes, her engaging use of language, and saw that poetry of hers as buds, as a bud that held promise of blooming, blossoming into flowers. And I thought to myself, here is a poet in the making. And I remarked, I said the same. And I was right. Here is the proof. The book before us is the proof that she is a poet. I would like to say something about her name. We all know Shakespeare, we all believe that Shakespeare said, what's in a name? The poor man never said that. He only made a character in a play say that in a particular context. I'm sure if he were alive today, he would indignantly deny and say that there is so much in a name. There is something about the name that is fascinating to me. I looked it up, I googled it of course, and I found that this word Tamara actually means, what does it mean?
It actually means a palm tree which provides shade.
Exactly. It means a palm tree, not our kind of, not the tenga bearing one, but the other one, the ones in the deserts in those places. It's a date palm, is what I found, Tamara. I don't know if that's right. A date palm, and symbolically it stands for the fruit of the date palm, which symbolically again means sweetness, nutrition, and abundance. See how well she has been named? Tamara, yes? That's what a poet does. A poet gives us through sweetness, very cunningly, very carefully. He lures us with the beauty of his words, and he gives us sweetness. And from that sweetness, we get nutrition, spiritual, many kinds of nutrition. And of course, abundance. Poets write so much, and they are abundant. So whoever named her, who named her, by the way? Father, mother? Mother, congrats. Tamara, well named. And as a long-time teacher of phonetics, I also found the vowels in her name very interesting. If you say it in an exaggerated way, her name is Tamara Nambiyar. See, what a lot of R's. How many R's? Nammada adhyatha aksharamana A. And A is again a very, very evocative sound. It is a vowel sound that is used universally, that is produced universally to express our, yes, anyone? No. Our appreciation. When you see this, you say, that is appreciation. And also, sadly, pain. Is a cry of pain. Again, very fitting that Tamara Nambiyar carries 5 R sounds in her name, because poetry creates appreciation. Poetry also creates in us a kind of pain. Out of that pain comes knowledge and sometimes comfort. So in every way, phonetics or semantics, call it what you like, this is a girl who has been aptly named. But that's not enough, of course. What carries her is, as her father mentioned, heredity. The throw of the dice, the genetic dice, was very good in her case. I think she scored a 6, 12, because she has inherited the literary qualities of her grandfather. I'm sure he also has them, he's being modest. And of course, the artistic qualities of the grandmother. I've seen her paintings, and therefore, Tamara is both, by virtue of her genes, she is both an artist and a creative writer. It's an unbeatable combination. I was looking at the etchings here, which brings me to something else I have to tell you. The moment I opened this book and started reading, I was reminded of a favorite English poet of mine. That's William Blake. Students of literature will know him, of course. William Blake was a late 18th century, early 20th century, late 18th century, early 19th century, pre-romantic poet. And he was a lot like Tamara, I think, because this is not like her. As a child, he used to see angels peeping through the window. He used to see angels or children sitting on the tree, imaginary, and he had visions. And he would turn these visions into sketches. And later, as he grew older, he made them etchings. You begin to see the resemblance with Tamara. And when he finally published his book, Songs of Innocence and Experience, you know how it looks? On one side, there's the poem. This side is the poem, and this side is the illustration. Again, an etching. I think it was on copper plate or something. Those are olden times. I'm not sure about the technical thing. So I thought, here is another little Blake. See, those illustrations and the poems. But that's not all. There is so much more about that Tamara has in common with Blake. Tamara's poetry is like that of Blake, both songs of innocence and songs of experience. The innocence I find in poems that have been read out now or mentioned, poems like, maybe I should take just a few lines, okay. First I should talk about Blake's Songs of Innocence. Those early poems are the view of a child, the vision of a child, and the poems are exquisitely simple. I'm sure many of you know this one. where Blake says in the Songs of Innocence, in the first part of the book, he says, "Little lamb, who made thee?" Lamb, Atumuti. "Little lamb, who made thee? Dost thou know who made thee?" That is the simple thing which, yes, there's more. "Gave thee such a tender voice, making all the vales rejoice. Little lamb, who made thee? Dost thou know who made thee?" Let me compare that with Tamara's Song of Innocence. Where is that, my girl? Page 47. Yes, 47 and 49. We have what Nirada also pointed out, the simplicity and the oneness with nature. Morning. I'm just reading a few lines. "A brand new day, a fresh start, so much time to play, so much to learn, so much to do." I'm coming to the main thing. "So lovely to wake up with the morning dew, the fresh morning dew. So much to sing, so much to paint. The morning is here. It's a brand new day." There are so many echoes of Blake, unconscious echoes of Blake. And coming to experience, yes, something has happened. Tamara has seen, has escaped or gone out of this world of innocence and seen, glimpsed the world of experience. Experience in Blake only means coming into contact with or seeing the horror, the ugliness, the evil, the suffering in the world, much like the Buddha did. So out of that comes beautiful poems, again very similar to the Blake's poems. So would you like to sit there? No. In this, I would categorize the poem, "Something is Burning." It is very similar to Blake's Tiger, the poem Tiger. Again, his attitude to love. Blake believed in free love. He believed that religion, the Christian religion, had fettered love and made it a sin to love. Page 65. This is one of my favorite poems in the book. Of course, my top favorite is the one everybody has been talking about. You know, the one where the newborn child talks. But here is one I like very much. "The power of love is undeniable. The power of love is, boy, so powerful. The power of love made you and me. It can fix any troubles between me and you and join broken hearts, put together shattered dreams." This is what all wise men and women have been saying down the centuries. Love one another or die. You know, the only solution is to love. And at this age, Tamara has reached that level of understanding. I love that poem. Okay, that was what my comparison with Blake ends probably with one more quality, altruism. Blake wanted the whole society to be happy. He didn't know the people he was talking about, but he wanted happiness and at least food and drink for them and some kind of shelter for them. And there's that poem she talked about, that Nirada talked about, where she says, Tamara says, "Be happy. You know, give them food." She talks about children. I think it's on page 39 where she strikes that altruistic note, which I found very interesting. Yes. Food and hunger too. They sit and wish, they dream of it all. People who are poor and destitute wish they could have at least one meal. And it goes on, finally, "Let us provide for all their needs, food and water, and a shelter safe and sound." So Tamara, you should be proud that you have so much in common with William Blake, who is one of the most lovable and deservedly popular poets of the pre-Romantic age, that is very close to the Romantic age. Okay, I'm almost at the end. I have to talk about the language and the style of Tamara Nambiar. As Nirada said, simple, almost conversational. The natural rhythms of speech, which is the way it should be. We no longer write poetry that uses artificial disjointed rhythms as we did earlier. So simple is the mantra, and she does that. Then, however, here and there, the simple language is enriched, enlivened by the very most unusual similes. I found 2 or 3 that were very striking. You know what it is? You would have seen them if you read them. She calls clouds. Now, what would you call clouds? Cotton wool, right? The usual, no, that won't do for Tamara, madam. It is spilt gum. Think of that, gum spilt on a table. See the shapes it takes. So what an imagination. And again, fear she compares to tap water gushing. So, this is perhaps the most vital instrument or tool of the poet, imagination. What is poetry but the expression of the imagination and the ability to create these memorable images out of very ordinary things is the mark of a very fine poet. Allow me to mention in this context a favorite poem of mine by the great poet sitting in the front row, Gopi Krishnan Kottur. I have been quoting this for more than 40 years without his permission. He didn't know that. This is a line from his poem where he says, very similar, how the imagination is able to transform very ordinary things into things of beauty, link them with our own lives and let them live. You know, in an old poem of his written when he was 19 or 20 or something, he says, tapioca leaves holding out their arms for sweets. Tapioca leaves, like children, holding out their hands for sweets. See? Can you ever see a tapioca leaf again without thinking of that? How appropriate it is. That is the kind of power I'm talking about, and she has it because she's able to create similes like this, which I don't think I'll ever forget. The gum and the water flowing. Actually, this is, Kuntaka's Vakroti in very, very minute, micro form. This ability, this obliqueness, this slanting nature of, that is of course poetry. Okay, that is about all. I think, Tamara, the time is not far before people will be asking you for dates. No, I don't mean the fruit, nor do I mean the other one. That will come, of course. She will be asked out to many dates. I'm talking about dates. Who? Reviewers, poetry meetings, TV channels. They'll be coming to you in a few years' time, asking for a date. Date, can I have a date? That will be the question they ask. So, I would like to close by saying that I see Tamara as a sensitive, questing soul, blessed with every quality needed to write great poetry. So every good wish to her, lady of sweetness, nutrition, and hopefully abundance. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Geeta. I can now add to the repertoire of missed opportunity of having taken English literature in the 2 degrees that I earned. Lastly, thank you, Mr. K. Jayakumar uncle, for coming here tonight. I know you had another appointment. Mr. K. Jayakumar is endowed with many talents, a distinguished civil servant who retired as Kerala's Chief Secretary, also proved his mettle as an educationist, as the first Vice-Chancellor of Malayalam University. He's also a renowned poet with many collections of poetry both in English and Malayalam. His lyrics in many Malayalam films are commonplace, and the rich poetic content in them is quite praiseworthy. A lesser known fact about him is that he's also a great painter, and I do want to add one personal story. When I, staying consistent with the chat from the banter from earlier today, the first time I met Jayakumar uncle when he was in Koilon, and maybe I was Tamara's age, and I remember playing with both his kids, and his son had fractured his right hand, and uncle maintained a fair amount of humor in that entire conversation. Can I have you up here for a few words, please? Thank you.
Heroine of the day, Tamara Nambiar, and distinguished audience and guests. Sorry for coming late, but I come from a function where it could not have been otherwise, because it was a function where I was being given an award. I'm not such a stickler to punctuality that I can say that off with your award, but I shall be here at 5 o'clock. Athratholam Adarsha Shuddhi vannittilla. But still I was feeling slightly uneasy. But by the time I got out, I discovered that the function is still on and one slot is still left. So I shall not keep you waiting here, or rather penalize you for waiting here till I came, because by 2 minutes you could have escaped. Tamara, I am not in a position to critically evaluate your poem. I read it, of course, but then so many eminent people have already, I find a galaxy of people who have already evaluated these poems. Sachidanandan has written a beautiful foreword. And what I discover from my familiarity with this book is that she's completely alive to the world. As a young person, people get distracted, and hers is an age where nothing really you really don't get engrossed in anything, engrossed in studies at best. But then she's engrossed with the world, with the universe, with the sky, with the stars. Everything is hers. I think that is the one final touch of a poet. For a poet, nothing is alien. Everything is mine. Everything is mine. She says, am I selfish? She even doubts in one poem, am I selfish? I want this. That kind of passionate engagement with life. I think that is a hallmark of a great poet. I find that she still has that, or not only that she is enchanted with whole of existence, whole of planets, universe, everything, but she also sees that magical touch in it. She can see magic everywhere. I think it was, I don't know who said it, that is, philosophy begins with wonder, somebody has said. Likewise, poets also begin with that kind of enchanted wonder. What is this? That is the streak of a good poet. And I see a great poet in her. As she said, a few years from now, we'll be old men like us will be coming after you for autographs, or signing the book, getting the book signed in great festivals and all that. I'll do justice to her by speaking less and reading only one poem. That is the last one, Magic in Us. I don't know whether anybody read it earlier. I hope not. Magic in Us, not only because it is the last poem, but I think it contains her magic. Magic in us. Magic is beautiful, but in the wrong hands, it can be evil. She has a perception about things, Magic is beautiful, but in the wrong hands, it can be evil. Be careful with magic. It runs away like a devil. Magic is a force, sometimes weak, sometimes strong. Your physics is doing well, weak force and strong force. Magic is there. Magic is force. It's a force, sometimes weak, sometimes strong. To those who seek it, your intentions may be bad and wrong, may be good and right. Magic is a spark that everyone has. We all are unique, and that is the magic we hold within. It's a very profound observation. Everyone is unique. And she approaches it in a very simple fashion, befitting her age. She says, magic is a spark that everyone has. We all are unique, and that is the magic we hold within. Isn't it? It is the magic of uniqueness that every one of us standing before the mirror combs the hair, which is receding in any case, and feel fine, well done. Good. It is that magic. That is the magic, That is the magic we hold within. We are all unique. Everyone, you have magic in yourself. But to find it, you must dream on. You must be the ideal you. Don't pretend to be someone else, because you are the best version of you. For a poet of her age, this is profound wisdom. This is profound poetry. I wish this young poet among us all success and glory in the days to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Can we now have Tamara come up and read her poems and potentially open it up for questions?
Hello everyone, thank you so much for coming here. So today I'll be reading 3 poems from my book. And firstly, after I read the 3 poems, there's going to be a Q&A session. So I would really appreciate it if you held your questions to the end. The first poem I'll be reading is called Into the Blinding Light. I've noticed that a lot of people here spoke about it today. And this poem has been written from the perspective of a newborn child. Into the blinding lights. Total darkness, not enough silence. Suddenly, a monster attacks, grabs me. I open my eyes. It's all blinding lights. I can barely see. I see silver thingamabobs and blue masks. I'm pushed into wet liquid. I can't breathe. I wiggle and struggle and eventually rise up. I feel scared. Where am I? It hurts to open my eyes and see. Feelings take control. Fear, pain, stress, tiredness. I shudder. This is the end. Suddenly, warmth wraps around me, just like in my dark home. I liked it with no lights, especially without these blinding lights. I fell into a trap and fell into the blinding lights. So, the second poem I shall be reading is called My Precious Moon. This poem is about how imaginative children are and how, whether I'm awake or asleep, we'll always have friends. My precious moon. There is darkness. I see that special white smile in the night sky. The moon, my moon, and its light. Sometimes her brightness is faint, but tonight she is white and bright. It lights up the dark sky, showing all the stars in sight. I go to bed in my room and look at the sky through the window, gaze up and smile, just like the moon. Slowly, I drift to sleep and enjoy a peaceful rest with the nightlight in the sky. My moon, my precious moon. It lights up the night and makes it oh so bright. If I'm lucky, I get to see the shooting stars in flight. The shiny, smiling moon giving the perfect amount of light so that I can see the sky with my eyes. I am free and I feel like I can fly in the night sky. My moon, my precious moon, she will be my flashlight, guiding me through the dark night. My moon will be my companion, never leaving my side. Sometimes playing hide and seek, hiding behind the clouds. Soon we say goodbye, but we know this won't be the last time. I wake up in the morning and go about my day, knowing my friend is waiting for me and that we will soon meet again. I love you, my moon, my precious moon. So the last and final poem I'll be reading is called Into Darkness. So whoever is reading the poem may have different perceptions of it. However, what I understand from it is that this poem is about death, karma, and rebirth. Into darkness. Into darkness we go, eternal silence and complete peace. Yet war rages on, and we have no knowledge of this. Into darkness we go, wondering what will happen. As we begin a new life, we say goodbye to our old one. Into darkness we go, knowing that from now there is no turning back. We try to ignore that pinch of guilt and regret. Into darkness we go, closing upon us. We glance back and take one last look at our previous life before being swallowed by the beast.
Do you want to stay here and feel the questions that people have?
Yeah.
Okay.
So now it'll be a Q&A session, so if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Now's the time to prove that nobody's fallen asleep.
You have the A's, but we don't have the Q's.
Sorry.
I think somebody else is asking. I'll ask later. Yeah, please go.
I'll set the ball rolling. Tamara, what took you to poetry rather than, say, essays? I would have imagined that would have been easier for you, or was it your imagination?
Well, the thing is, when my grandmom and I had that fight, which is what inspired me to write. So then the thing was that I only had a small notepad with me, so I guess I just wrote a small thing, and then I realized that that's a poem, and I realized how fun it is to write poetry, and I also realized it meant using my hand less, because at that time I used to write, but now I mostly type it on my laptop. And I realized writing poetry let me use my hand a lot less, so it didn't keep that much of a strain on me. But I find that poetry is a lot easier to write as it just comes to me. But when I'm writing other stuff, I need to think about what I'm writing a lot more. But poetry for me just flows, which makes it a lot easier. Thank you.
Tamara, brilliant to us here.
Yeah. Okay.
Brilliant. Do you like to, most of the things see on nights when you write, darkness, moon, and such type of things, than the bright sunlights which are coming during the day? Is there a choice for you between what's happening in the daytime and what's happening in the night? Yeah, that's right.
I mostly write about things that happen in my life. So when I write about the night, it usually means if something happened to me in the night. But I tend to write things during the daytime. But usually I'm not aware of what I'm writing, which is something I find very weird. So when I look back at my poetry, I'm like, oh, I don't understand this. And then after reading it again and again, I remember why I was writing it. So when it comes to day and night, it mostly just, like I said earlier, it just flows to me. So most of it is about events that happen. So like when I'm writing about the moon, it's probably because the night before that I was maybe looking at the moon and or watching a movie that had that started with the DreamWorks logo or something. So I think it depends on things that happened to me before.
Okay, thank you.
Tamara, page 54. Your poem, May I Have This Dance? It's a very delightful poem, I find, very romantic. And it's set against the Eiffel Tower. There's a young, presumably handsome, persuasive young man asking our young Tamara for a dance. May I have this dance? This is interesting because of the French accent, I guess.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yes.
Yes. And Paris, you have spelled as P-A-R-I.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So I get the hang of it. This is set in the city of love, in the country Paris, Paris. And the young man is very persuasive. There's a refrain in all the stanzas. May I have this dance, mon ami? And my question is, Tamara, did you grant that dance?
Well, it wasn't really me, so I guess you'll have to ask the actual girl.
Oh,
but I haven't met her, sadly.
No, you can't escape. You have to give me an answer. Did you do that? Did you dance with the young man?
I'm actually not sure.
Not sure. Okay, I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Tamara. Delightful poem.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
No, you said there's always something that inspires you, something that triggers a spark in you, yeah? Is there a poem you've written, just spun out of a fantasy coming from nowhere?
There is one that I read. It's the last one that I read called Into Darkness. So I remember my grandfather had the idea of creating a poetry book, and obviously we got ideas from others too, to make it like a book. So I remember my mom, she was going out and she was asking me to write a poem. So my dad was on a call in his room, and I was sitting on my bed just listening to the call, being bored out of my mind, and then remembering what my mom said, and I'm like, oh no, I forgot to write a poem, knowing my mom would come home soon. So then suddenly, I stared at my laptop for a second, and then as if someone was dictating me, but someone else telling me what to write, I just wrote it, but I had no idea what I was writing. It just came to me, and I didn't exactly have inspiration from it, or I didn't have inspiration to write it. It just came, yeah.
That's beautiful. That's
Thank you.
beautiful. One more question I have. So what you're saying is it's like it just flows.
Yeah.
Like it's some divine power or whatever. It just flows through you and the lines just come. So anyway, you have felt that you should rewrite or perfect it a bit, or have you done any kind of rehashing, or it's just always the way it comes? You leave it like that.
Once I finish writing the poem, I don't reread it. If I do reread it once to make sure there aren't typos, because for some reason they really bother me. But if there are like spelling errors, I'll just fix that. But I won't change the structure of the sentence. I won't move things around because I feel like it's perfect the way it is. But then once I reread it, like a while after, I see maybe I can change this, but I still don't, because I know that if I do, there's some like I know a lot of people, especially my parents, tell me that I don't know when to stop, like when I'm painting or writing. So I know that I'm gonna make I'm probably not gonna ruin it, but I'm gonna change that flow. It's like taking a river and trying to move the river to another side of a certain place, and that just takes a lot of effort. And I not just that, but I feel like if I were to redo my poem or move things around, it would ruin the flow, and I would lose the element that I had when I was writing it.
Thank you. All good, Tamara? Do you want to keep going?
I mean, if anyone else has questions, then sure. Yeah.
It's very audible. Just tell us something about some of the poets you have read. So any influence, anything that must have inspired you. Say any poet.
I don't exactly read too many poetry books, but my grandfather recently has been sending me a lot, so I will be reading those now. But I don't exactly read too much poetry around me. But I do know, like in our school sometimes, like I remember once we had an assignment to write a haiku poem, and for that our teachers had given us an example. So sometimes when others show poems to me and read it out, that's usually when I hear about other poems. But usually I don't expose myself by myself to other poems. Usually others expose me to it.
Okay, I think we're out of questions, Samara, for now, perhaps. Thank you so much. Thank you. On a parting note, thank you all for being here. In the Roman Emperor Cicero's words, it's gratitude is not just a virtue, but it is the parent of all virtues. So a big round of gratitude to everybody here. Let me start off by thanking the publisher, Authors Press, and Mr. Sudarshan for having taken a bet on a young Tamara and discovering her. Thank you to Kerala International Center and Mr. T.P. Srinivasan, who's unfortunately not here today. Thank you to Mr. Adul Gopalakrishnan for being the guest of honor today. Thank you to Mr. Jaikumar and Mr. M.B. Pillai for taking time out of their hectic schedules to be with us today, and for blessing Tamara for her poems. Thank you to Professor Geeta and Ms. Nirda for blessing her and for being here today. Thank you all once again. On a parting note, behind every successful woman is another successful woman who puts the toil in, and I know my wife Lakshmi put a lot of work to ensure that Tamara's poems come out well. And behind that successful woman is also another successful man who ensures that things are taken to completion. So I should give a round of gratitude to my dad for having worked hard. And behind that successful person is usually another man who stands and takes credit for doing nothing. Therefore, I shall not take credit for anything. But having heard this at least 3 or 4 times, the mother who berated us all should also be given credit where it's due. Big round of gratitude to everybody here. And lastly, please do express your form of gratitude by purchasing the book. The book sale is outside. Tamara will be spending time outside. There's tea and refreshments, I suppose. The book is on sale on Amazon. Thanks a lot again. Namaskaram and Jai Hind.
Thank you. Wait, I'll take it.
Godfather